This podcast is brought to you by Voice and Vision, bringing help, hope, and healing to individuals, families, and communities affected by mental illness, addictions, and disabilities in southeastern Pennsylvania.
Welcome to Untold Valor, a podcast with a unique focus on veterans, featuring stories of courage, recovery, perseverance, and strength. Listen to hear veterans share their perspectives on what it's like to battle mental health challenges, combat addictions, and overcome other adversities unique to those who have served.
Welcome to another edition of Untold Valor, Veterans Recovery in Action. We're always excited to have our guest on the show and talk about the unique focus that veterans and their stories provide for other veterans and listeners out there. And we are super excited about this week's guest. Actually, we're over 2 episodes. We're going to have Jeremy Stalnecker with us here. He's co-founder and executive director and a USMC veteran with Mighty Oaks Foundation. So we're really looking forward to having Jeremy here with us to talk about what's going on with Mighty Oaks and his story, and just have a great conversation as we tend to do with all these wonderful folks we have come on here. So I won't beat around the bush too much because he's got a very big bio, and it would take me pretty much the whole show just to talk about that. So we'll just get right into it. Jeremy, how are you, sir?
Doing great, man. Thank you. Thank you for this. Excited about the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here with us. We certainly appreciate it. Reverend Ben's here as always. My friend, how are you, sir?
Fantastic. How you guys doing?
Doing very well. Glad to have you here, and looking forward to just chatting. So let's just jump in a little bit. Jeremy, give us a quick kind of backstory real fast on yourself and also then on Mighty Oaks. We had Chad actually on about a year ago, and he's part of this organization as well. So just kind of clue us in a little bit again on what's going on with Jeremy and what's going on with Mighty Oaks.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Man, I'll give you the flyover because all of us have a story. It's funny, my bio, I send it, I'm always like, man, I need to shorten that thing. I think all of us have a long bio, right?
Right.
We don't always sit down and write it out, and there are a lot of things that happen in our lives. And I always reminded at how God uses the seemingly disjointed pieces of our life to bring us to exactly where he wants us to be.
Great point.
And I grew up in a very conservative Christian home. My dad was actually a pastor, and I always joke that the one thing you learn growing up in a pastor's home is that you don't want to be a pastor. That's the one thing you learn, and it is a joke, right? I am very grateful for my parents and what they did, and as a kid, I watched how hard they worked and how dedicated they were, and was proud of them, but knew that's not the route that I felt called to. Didn't come from a military family,
okay,
but had some military influences in my life. Some of those were books. In fact, a lot of those were books. My son, who's 14, asked me a couple weeks ago, did you watch a lot of videos on the military and a lot of movies? And that's why no, there were no videos. There weren't a lot of movies, and I didn't have access to the ones that existed. But I read a lot of books and read a lot of stories and started to understand that there were people who had gone before us that gave their lives to something big and important.
Yeah.
And then we had, when I was younger, had some World War II veterans in my life, and I'd sit and hear stories. And long story short, ended up going to college because my parents wanted me to go to college before I did anything else. And then I was commissioned as an officer in the Marine Corps out of college, served with 1st Battalion, 5th Marines, an infantry unit based out of Camp Pendleton here in Southern California. Did a number of things. My last deployment was to Iraq in 2003 and was part of the initial movement into Iraq. 1st Infantry Battalion into the country was ours. Breached the berm, moved into the country March 19th and 20th, 2003, and made our way to Baghdad and came home. And so that was my last deployment, which is it's a banger, right? That's the way to go out.
Yeah.
And had already made the decision before going to Iraq, and there was a lot wrapped up in that decision, but had already made the decision to get out, came home, and a month later, literally, boots back on the ground here in the United States. A month later, I was out of the Marine Corps, and of all things, went to work at a church.
I was getting ready to say, you made the comment about not wanting to be a pastor, and I see on your bio that you are a pastor.
Yeah, they joke or they say if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right? Like, I'm not doing that. And and there's a lot wrapped up in that, of course, and a lot of years of influence. But
sure.
God brought us around and brought us to a place where I left the Marine Corps, went to work at a church, and then eventually pastored a church for a number of years. And man, in all of that, I had to deal with some things personally and had to, try to find myself and had really some difficulties doing that and had some good people step into my life. And a big part of me moving forward after the Marine Corps was not looking back at the Marine Corps. I didn't stay connected to anyone. I didn't, I didn't do the normal stuff.
You kind of needed separation.
Yeah, I needed that separation and did. But what that meant was after 10 years of being out of the Marine Corps, I wasn't connected to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But a guy who I had served with reached out to me through Facebook. Again, 10 years after we had left the Marine Corps. And he said, "Hey, I met this guy, Chad Ro-bichaux, and he's starting this organization for veterans. He's a Marine combat veteran. He's starting this thing, and he has invited some of us to come to be a part of this program." And we can talk about Mighty Oaks, but at that time, Chad and his family were starting Mighty Oaks, and they were trying to figure out what that was going to look like and trying to get some people to attend to help figure that out, right?
Sure, yeah.
And they had an idea, they wanted to help, but they didn't know exactly what that was going to look like. And so I ended up there, and some great things happened while I was there. One of those was I met Chad, got to know him, understood his vision, his hope for Mighty Oaks, what it would be and what that would look like. And he and his family had been working at that for about a year up to that point. And he asked me if I'd come along and help. He was putting it together. Chad's very charismatic. He does a great job of getting people together and was doing that then, but needed help with developing curriculum and teaching and training teachers and doing those kind of things. So that was my background. That's what I had been a part of. And so we started working together, and eventually I left the church that I was pastoring to take a full-time position with Mighty Oaks.
That's
and
awesome.
That was all over the course of years. But
yeah,
so that's the 30,000 foot level. But man, it's been quite a journey.
Well, so for folks who would like some more information, if you don't recall the episode with Chad on here, and if you'd like to go check it out, go check out Mighty Oaks online, mightyoaksprograms.org. mightyoaksprograms.org. And basically, Jeremy, kind of that 30,000 foot view is it's dedicated to helping America's military warriors and their families, right, suffering with those unseen wounds, right, post-traumatic stress issues, so on and so forth. Did you feel that you had some of that yourself? You said you were kind of struggling when you moved away, you needed to move away from the Marine Corps as you were kind of adjusting back to life. Is that something you felt you were dealing with as personally?
It's funny. In 2003, people weren't really talking about post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic stress disorder and combat trauma. We weren't talking about it. In fact, I started struggling very shortly after coming home, and the response from people was basically like, "What's wrong with you?" Right? Like, why are you acting like this? And so if you had asked me then if post-traumatic stress was real or post-traumatic stress disorder was real, I would have said no, emphatically. Meanwhile, I almost lost my job working at the church because I was so out of control and so disruptive. My wife stayed with me, praise God, but probably had good reason not to. I was destroying every relationship in my life. Meanwhile, saying, no, that PTSD thing's not real.
Gotcha.
I struggled with identity for sure. I struggled with trying to find a new path forward. And then looking back, and I have spent time on this personally. I think dealing with the trauma of combat and even the trauma of separation that quickly after combat was something I was definitely dealing with.
Gotcha. Well, Reverend Ben, let me get you in here for a minute. Obviously, there's several pieces of Jeremy's story here that you can relate to. Certainly, the pastor piece as well, right? And so you've kind of gone on your own. You've gone on your own spiritual journey when you went from military to God as well.
Exactly. I can relate to your story, Jeremy. I was at 2nd Battalion, 2nd Marines, Camp Lejeune.
Oh, no way. That's awesome.
Yeah, I was a corpsman. I was a corpsman with Fox 2-2. Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
I can definitely relate to your story. And listen, I was listening to you when you were talking about the PTSD. Many a veteran has PTSD and doesn't even know what they have, even today.
Right.
That's why it's so important that we educate these guys and let them know that what's going on with them is something it's not inclusive. It's everybody can get it. It's exclusive. It's not just with them.
Yep.
So they can seek and get help for it. Because I too was struggling with some things when I came home, and I didn't know what it was. I had no idea. But through my journey, my spiritual journey and my academic journey, I found out what was wrong, and only then could I really address it.
Yeah, and I think, Jeremy, that's really the goal, yes, of Mighty Oaks and what they're trying to do is help get more information and get more resources and things of that nature. So I know we want to talk a little bit about what's going on currently, what's going on, what's in the news, I suppose, with Mighty Oaks.
Yeah, you're exactly right. What we do is work with men and women who are struggling, and sometimes it is related to combat, other times it's not. Often it's trauma or brokenness, hurt that's related to life,
Okay.
and just kind of blown up or exacerbated because of military service or service as a first responder. But what we understand is that the traumas of our lives, they happen. We don't forget them. We don't get over them, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're part of who we are, but they don't need to be that thing, those events that bind us, that keep us from moving forward. They don't need to be our identity. And so what we do is we talk about exactly that. How do we move forward despite what's happened to us in our past? And when we understand, we're a faith-based organization, so when we understand that we were created and that creation comes with purpose and design, then we can move into that purpose for which we were created. And with that comes hope. And as we move forward, again, we don't forget those things behind us, but they don't have us bound anymore. They become a part of our story. In fact, they can even become a helpful part of our story as we use that to reach out and encourage others. So that's what we do. And again, it's not fancy, right? It's not, crazy how we do it or what we do. We just have men and women who have been through this. Everyone who is a part of our program has come through as a student.
Okay.
And so all of our instructors are either veterans or active duty service members or first responders. And so they stand in front of a room of people who are veterans, active duty service members, and first responders. And we're able to look eyeball to eyeball. It's not a clinical program where we look, top down. It's very much, I know where you are because I've been there. I've struggled the same way that you've struggled, and I want to help you move forward. And so there's a lot of power in that. And we've seen a lot of help come from that. And I think it was C.S. Lewis that said, friendship is born in the moment one person looks at another person and says, "What, you two? I thought I was the only one."
Right. Yeah.
And man, that's really what it's about. And then helping each other move forward.
Well, and I think that's a key piece for many veterans, right? Because sometimes it's like, look, maybe I don't feel comfortable going and talking to a clinician, right? Maybe I don't feel that that's the what I just need someone who can relate to me, right? Who can walk through me. I mean, that's what the folks at Voice and Vision do that help us put on this podcast. I mean, that's part of the CompUSA Core. It's part of so many organizations where it's like you can walk the walk and talk the talk because you've been there, and that makes a big difference.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in the military community, I think that is what makes the difference, right?
Okay.
It's again, there are a lot of wonderful approaches, and some
Absolutely.
of them are clinical approaches.
Yeah.
So I'm not dismissing that.
Absolutely not.
But those who have served in uniform, again, military, first responder, there is this almost facade that comes with that. There's this belief that if you haven't done what I'm doing or been a part of what I'm a part of, then you can't possibly know what it's like to be me. You can't possibly know what it's like to struggle like me. And we dismiss very qualified help because we say, well, you just don't know what it's like. And so when we're able to lead with our story, we're able to say, no, I do know what it's like because I've struggled the same way. I've been there. Well, that changes the conversation entirely and really opens the door for help.
Yeah, that's a great point. So let me ask you about the different types of programs, Jeremy. So, reading here the Mighty Oaks Warrior programs, they have, host men, women, marriage programs as well. You talked a little bit about, your wife staying with you, which is, thank God, right? Right. And you have multiple locations nationwide. And I think that's certainly a big piece of the struggle too, where often there's a lot of focus, rightfully so, on what the veterans need for recovery, but it can be a family affair. It is a family affair. The kids can suffer from seeing this. The marriage can suffer. So it's important to whatever you're needing to just reach out for that help.
Yeah. And again, we can't meet every need, but we understand that when a person struggles, that impacts, everyone in their world. And
right.
often
Yeah.
their world is the family. And so that's why for us, we say we serve 4 communities. We serve the veteran, the active duty service member, the first responder, and the spouse. And so we open our programs to spouses, whether it's, a husband or a wife who's married to someone that's struggling with post-traumatic stress, because often they will receive some post-traumatic stress as a result of helping that person, being around them. They need help understanding it and get the tools themselves. And so that's a very important part of what we do. And then bringing a husband and wife together so they can, take some of the tools they've received and some of the lessons they've learned to work together to move forward is really critical as well. And so we work with a couple of other organizations who do an incredible job with marriage programs and marriage curriculums and things like that, and try to make that happen. So yeah, healing and I guess just health, it really is a family affair, and we need to help the individual, kind of ground zero, and then help those who have been impacted by what's happened.
Reverend Ben, jump in here a little bit with what's your take on that? Seeing things the way that you're seeing them in your organization and neck of the woods. How is that helpful as far as the family, aesthetic goes? Like, whether it's the kids or the wife or.
Actually, I see the parallel and what Compare Cure does and what Mighty Oaks is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, because what I'm hearing is we're building relationships. And it's one of the main things that we do at Compare Cure is we build relationships with veterans, with other veterans, and to support veterans. And a lot of times, even the one that's giving the support is also getting supported. Yeah. So like Jeremy said, it works on both sides. It's no up or down. We see eye to eye.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think what we're going to do, Jeremy, is I want to kind of wrap it up here this week. In just a minute, we'll take the next couple of minutes and just talk about, what's next or what's going on. If people would like to get some help or get involved, and then we'll have you back on another episode here. And I really want to talk about the kind of four things to focus on that you have kind of highlighted here on your bio, which I think is pretty interesting and our listeners might find very useful. So, if people would like to get involved or need help or they want to reach out to Mighty Oaks or whatever, what's some things that you would suggest or that you would offer up?
I think the easiest way to connect with us is our website, mightyoaksprograms.org. That will take you to our website. And there you'll find a few things. And one thing is the application button. So you go to that apply button. There is no cost for our program. Our program is 5 days long. It happens in one of five locations across the country. Mm-hmm. And so if you apply, there's no cost to you. And we'll cover the cost of travel to get there. And so we just want to remove every obstacle for you to get the help that you need. So apply there. That's a great way to find out about us. You can learn more about us on the website. There are also resources that we have there. We have a book on resiliency, being resilient in your life, a book on suicide and dealing with this epidemic of veteran suicide, a book on post-traumatic stress. All of those are on our website as well and available for free download. Those are just resources that we want to make available to you. And then all of our contact information is there as well. So that is the easiest and probably clearest way to find out about us and certainly reach out if you have questions that aren't answered there.
Okay, so again, that was mightyoaksprograms.org, mightyoaksprograms.org, and we'll put that information in the show notes descriptions as well for this week's show. So, Jeremy, I always finish off the podcast with, and we'll probably wind up doing more of this, actually. It'll probably walk us into our next episode with you, with kind of a final message, if, as being a former well, I guess there's no such thing as a former Marine, right? What's a Marine? Always a Marine. But being in the military and just, kind of saying, hey, look, if you're struggling, no matter what it is, here's my message to you. Whatever the case is, what do you need to move forward? I always say, kind of, what would you say to other vets out there that are listening or their family members that are listening and say, I need to take action. I need to do something.
I think probably the most important first message that I would deliver to someone who's struggling is that there is hope. There is always hope. And we find ourselves in these dark situations. We come out of difficult times and we think, well, it's hopeless. There's no way to move forward. But there is hope. Outside of the circle that we stand in, outside of the mess that we might find ourselves in, there is hope. There is opportunity. There are people who want to help you move forward, but you have to be willing to take that first step, to make the decision, to take that step, to get the help that you need. And once you've made that decision and you've taken that step, man, the world opens up because there are so many people who want to help you get from where you are to where you really need to be.
Great message.
So true. So true. That is so true. Because I'm a veteran. I'm one who can vouch for that, having been on the dark side of things. And once my mindset was changed and my spirit woke up, it was like the sky's the limit. Eyes have not seen, the ears have not heard.
Yeah,
Great.
That's it.
There you go. Couldn't find a better way to close it out, guys. Thank you so much for that. So what we're going to do, again, we're going to wrap this one up this week. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast, Untold Valor. Certainly appreciate Jeremy Stalnecker being here with us from Mighty Oaks Foundation. And, of course, Reverend Ben, as always. And we're going to have Jeremy back for another episode. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you like using, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, whatever the case might be. Lots of links and information in the show notes description. So check that out. And we will see you next time here on Untold Valor, Veterans Recovery in Action. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Untold Valor by Voice and Vision. We hope you found the information and resources discussed today helpful. As always, thank you for listening and for your support. Remember to stay connected with us through our various social media platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Don't forget to visit the website, voiceandvisioninc.org. That's voiceandvisioninc.org, where you can sign up for our blog and find free resources and information on upcoming events, webinars, workshops, and get support. You can also access our free help and hope guide for individuals and families struggling with substance use and addiction. If someone you know is struggling, please reach out for help because you and your life matter. Remember, the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is available to you at any time by dialing 988. We are all ambassadors of hope and recovery. And if you want to share your story, please contact us. Compeer Corps is also looking for veteran mentor volunteers and veteran participants. To find out more information about Compeer Corps, please call 610-541-0790. That's 610-541-0790. You can find all the links and contact information for the resources mentioned on today's episode by checking the description and the show notes section of your app. Thank you again for tuning in and for your support. Until next time, this has been Untold Valor.